one has to deal with the new climate change initiatives I've seen. It's called the 18 to 8. Now this, I wanted to cover this after I saw a video pop up in my social media. The premise of this initiative is to lower the voting age from age 18 to age 8. That's where the name comes from. It's being pushed by David Suzuki and his foundation. Suzuki also appeared in the video I saw. The idea is that adults are not taking climate change seriously enough, but the children and teenagers would, as they would be the ones facing the brunt and the consequences of inaction on this issue. Thus, the voting age should be lowered, the proponents argue, so candidates with environmental policies can be elected and the issue would be addressed by lawmakers, since lowering the voting age to 8 would force this policy to end up on the ballot, essentially. Those arguing for this change point out that in 12 years, the damage caused by climate change will be so severe that it can't be reversed. Alright, those are the facts on this one. So now we can get the analysis started. Now, I know based on my diet, my weight, and overall health in general, I'm probably due for a heart attack or stroke at some point. And the sheer stupidity of this story might just be enough to cause it. Where the hell do I start with this one? This initiative is so bloody insane to me that I have no idea where to begin trying to start breaking it down. When the video popped up on my Facebook feed, I watched it, I was curious, but it made my head hurt. I could not believe what I was watching. I could not understand how people that expect to be taken seriously expect anyone to not treat this like a joke. I feel I have to give several disclaimers before I move forward, just so we're clear. I believe climate change is real. I feel denying it is ridiculous. Or saying that it's fake or a hoax or whatever, I think it's ridiculous. Now, I think we could have a realistic debate on what has caused climate change. Is it man-made or made by the activity of humans? Or is this just essentially Earth's natural cycles? Earth going through its natural cycles, essentially. But regardless, realistically, we still have to have an environment to live and thrive in. But you know what else is ridiculous? Climate alarmism. And there's a lot of that now. Now, you can be concerned about the environment. There's nothing wrong with that. But when the rhetoric behind the issue goes to essentially apocalyptic levels, that's where you cross the line. You've become the boy essentially who cried wolf. You end up sounding like everybody that pointed to the Mayan calendar predicting the end of the world, or Y2K with all the computers that were going to crash because the computers wouldn't know how to read the 99 going to 00. You will make the topic itself is just flustering me, but you make the skeptic in me, when you talk about this 12-year thing, you make the skeptic in me want to make sure nothing is done on this issue so that in 12 years we could show you were wrong. But we're going to come back to the whole boy who cried wolf analogy a little later. So first I want to address the main idea. Should we actually give kids as young as 8 the right to vote? Even in just addressing this, I barely know where to start. The short answer is no. Hell no. Never. I won't even consider it. The long answer, of course, is a lot more complicated. The biggest concern for me is, will 8-year-olds even understand what they're voting for? We have adults, whether young, middle-aged, or old, that have no idea how our system works or what candidates' policies would actually do to our country. Even adults with the best experience necessary to manage the issues our society faces are not able to resolve problems. You already cannot seem to properly balance the environmental needs against economic needs. How do you expect children to do any better? Easy. They won't. Did you even read Lord of the Flies in high school? I did. I went to a French school and I even read that in class. This is what happens when kids are in charge. Read it and you'll understand exactly what I mean. Young children are not going to be able to understand the complex workings of our economy. Adults barely understand it. Sure, there would be some kind of action taken on climate change, but what are we supposed to do? Get rid of all fossil fuels? It's not that easy. When I see these kids with signs that say things like fossil fuels are for dinosaurs, I truly question if they understand what they are saying. Now, we do have alternative energies. Natural gas is definitely one of them, but I doubt environmentalists would even accept switching over to natural gas. I imagine they would push more for renewable energies. That's great and all, but there are issues. You could put up all the solar panels, all the windmills, all the water wheels you want, but you still need to store that energy somewhere. Do we have enough storage capacity to do a completely overhaul the power grid? Do we have the capacity? Do we have ways to make sure we have the capacity, essentially the battery space, for lack of a better term, to store all this energy that's generated by solar, wind? Would an 8-year-old even know that? I bet there are adults that didn't even know you had to worry about where you're storing the power that's generated. But on top of that, the way the lithium of the batteries you need, the way the lithium is mined, it's not mined in the most environmentally friendly ways. Do kids even understand that? I doubt adults do. Now, like as I said, do kids really even understand that? Or do they just parrot whatever adult authority figure tells them? Even adults essentially do that. Adults parrot what they hear all the time. Basically, if it's said by somebody they respect. Kids would be no different. We can't just manifest new technology out of the void. You can't just snap your finger, reach into the void, and pull out a new technology that's going to further make renewable energy viable to replace fossil fuels. We need to work with the technology we have currently and continue to work or improve on existing new technologies. There needs to be a tax incentive for entrepreneurs to effectively develop new clean energy technologies that will eventually replace fossil fuels. Until then, guess what? You need fossil fuels. Period. This is why adults vote. In theory, adults are better equipped to understand the world we live in and the consequences of government policies. Again, I stress, in theory. We all could point out some adults that have no idea what they're talking about, that essentially just look at party names when they go vote on the ballot when they go vote. And that's all they do to make a decision. So again, stress the in theory. Now, in my experience, kids will be heavily influenced by their parents or any adult authority figure that they respect, teachers, what have you. I can give you an example of this. As a kid, I remember being set straight by my parents when I heard something kind of weird at school. This is unrelated to the environment, but I thought it was a kind of funny story to share. We had a presentation one day by some cultural figure that was in the community of my hometown. Now, he made a joke about magically making school disappear so we wouldn't have to go to school anymore. And he said the best day to do it would be on one of those days where teachers would have to be at school, but kids don't. Forgive me, I don't know what the term is in English. In French, it's un journée pédagogique. If you're bilingual, hopefully you'll understand what that meant. But the idea is teachers are there, students aren't. and it's usually on a weekday. Now, I thought that was funny. I came home, I told my parents. My mom's a teacher. So I remember both my parents kind of snapped at me saying, effectively saying, he made a joke about making a school disappear while your mother was in it so you wouldn't have a mother. Now, I understand that looking at it that way, that was kind of a messed up thing to say. Even though with my dark humor, I still kind of find it funny. But if somebody's going to do that on an Oculus joke like that, what do you think is going to happen on a major issue like the environment? I can give you another anecdotal story. While I was in Alberta at the Edson Leader, I remember going to a school concert where the students performed some kind of play where they were all trees, and the villains of this story were loggers. Most of those children, guess where their dads probably worked? As loggers. So I can only imagine what happened when those kids went home and tried to explain the play they were going in. Now, I'm sure everybody had good humor. The play was actually pretty funny. These are just two examples where I'm sure if these were presented seriously, parents would definitely set their kids straight. Which shows whoever is pushing this 18 to 8 idea hasn't thought it through. This initiative honestly has me worried about what kids are being taught in school. It has me worried that maybe it has given me a stroke. But this is making me question, are kids being fed propaganda in schools now? Children need to be taught to think critically. This has me worried seriously that is propaganda being taught in school rather than math, science, language, and other useful subjects. It makes me feel like the environmental lobby is trying to target kids because it feels it can better convince kids of the environment essentially being in an apocalyptic disaster in 12 years better than adults. I don't like thinking in such a conspiratorial fashion, but I'm honestly worried. I support public schools and still will, but I would be lying if I didn't have concerns on the curriculum. I've seen too many of these climate strikes already where kids take essentially a day off school to go protest somewhere about the environment. Usually it's in front of some kind of government office. This makes me question, is this a student-led initiative or is it teacher-led? If the students are leading it, then so be it. I disagree with what the kids are doing, but I will defend their freedom of speech. But if it's not student-led and it's teacher-led, that is completely different. Now we have a problem. Now I have to ask, is the school, is the education system trying to indoctrinate kids? That's a line that's crossed. Now I want to go back to my time in Edson again. I had an epiphany when talking to some of the people I knew in the town. I know some parents that would send their kids to a local private Christian school who may not have actually been Christian themselves. They could have been secular atheists or unreligious or maybe Christian themselves. Now, what I found noteworthy about this is the kids were being sent to that school not because of religion. It was not because they would get a Christian education. It was because at that school parents had more of a say in what their kids were taught. Now I'm not going to lie, I had some concerns about this Christian school. I was curious about what was being taught in science class. But I understood why parents would want to send their kids to a school where they had a little more control about what was being taught. So this has me wondering, maybe it is time for parents to have more of a say of what happens in public schools. Who knows? As someone with no kids, I know I don't have a dog in this fight. It would be up to parents to figure this out. Now the stories I gave, I know, are anecdotal, but I am sure I'm not alone in feeling what I have described. So, one thing I want to say to these activists: do you really think the kids will vote the way you want? To me, I think you would need to have environmentalist parents that are on board for you to ensure that you get the result you want. If we're talking to kids that have conservative parents, you're not going to get the outcome you want. If you have parents that work in the energy sector, you're not going to get the vote you want. What if the child lives in a household that doesn't vote? Their parents have no interest in voting. How's an 8-year-old going to get to the polls? How is an 8-year-old even going to have identification? We haven't even talked about voter ID laws on this one. Would an 8-year-old even have... Would they be exempt from it? Would an 8-year-old even have ID? Will this mean we have to scrap voter ID laws? It seems to me that this is an idea where the logistics are not fully ironed out, and therefore this initiative should still be on the drawing board. Also, how will this change how candidates campaign? I think this is a big issue. Will our elections start being catered more towards children than adults? I got a problem with that. Now, the bottom line, this is a massively poorly thought out idea, plain and simple. To me, it reeks of desperation on part of a movement throwing a temper tantrum because they're currently being ignored. I think that's a good analogy. It's like a bunch of kids screaming and acting up because they didn't get their way. I don't get it. I don't get why they're feeling this way. We have a prime minister that, as far as I'm concerned, looks like he's taking the environment seriously. We got a carbon tax because of him. Is this a movement in Canada that is effectively a protest because Donald Trump isn't doing anything about the environment? Not to sound conspiratorial again, but it does not help this initiative's case when there was a report released earlier this year that concluded that climate change in Canada is essentially 3 times worse than the rest of the world. Or at least the effects we're feeling are 3 times worse. That gets even further exacerbated with this notion that in 12 years the damage will be irreparable. That's the danger of climate alarmism. It seems that every day that goes by, the activists will pull out some new report or some new study that says it's even worse than we thought. We got to do even more now to fix things. Now, if you want the average person to care about your issue, you have to present yourself as sane. Acting like the sky is falling will never get that done. We should all be able to understand the dilemma. It's hard when a major issue that you care about so deeply is not being dealt with. It's difficult to deal with a situation when you feel no one is listening, or worse yet, no one cares. It's frustrating. You may get desperate for attention, but regardless, you need to stay reasonable. You need to be reasonable in this political climate. We have both the left and the right of the political spectrum immediately dismissing each other's ideas just because of the side that it came out of. The environment is one of the biggest political issues that it's pushing that the right dismisses. When you start to talk like an end times prophet, you only make the problem worse for yourself. If the 12-year thing is really true, you need to make sure you present your arguments, well, like a sane person. You need to demonstrate that you want to gauge the other side to look for solutions. If you don't, you will continue to spin your tires and get nothing done. The left needs to realize that there is nothing wrong with having some skepticism regarding climate change. To many, the phenomena can be explained by the Earth's natural cycles. Bottom line, you need to work with people, not against them. So here's my advice to everybody pushing for lowering the voting age. Listen to George Carlin. Leave the kids alone. I want to thank you for watching this video. If you like what you saw, please like it. If you don't, well, there's the thumbs down. If you agree, disagree, or just want to continue the conversation, please leave a comment down below. Also, subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can also follow me on Facebook, Minds, and Twitter. The links will be down below in the description. Thank you again. Have yourself a good day. Until next time.